Hello, everybody. My name is Joseph. I am going to be your low budget host of the day. I'm having to switch things up a little bit this week. My schedule kind of got thrown off, so hope you guys are okay with me doing an album review on Sunday. So, and then I'll do my news video on Wednesday. And yeah. So the album I'm going to review today is Lateralus by Tool. Um, this is an album I've been wanting to talk about for a while, only because I personally enjoy the album, but I also see it as a great example of why I like and don't like Tool. I'm not a hardcore fan, so I may say some stuff that might end up triggering some hardcore fans. Yep, that's not everybody likes Tool, gonna be honest there. So, anyways, to kind of give you a little bit of backstory, Tool is a metal band. They're from California. They're considered prog metal, which means they're highly experimental. And for a band that supposedly is highly experimental, they're to me the most basic out of all the prog metal bands out there, sound wise. They don't really deviate a whole lot from the chord progressions that they use. So in that regard, they're a little bit like Rush, because Rush has a tendency to do the same thing where they don't like to switch keys up a whole lot. So, but anyways, outside that though, they're still a very, very well done band. The rhythm section is easily one of the best rhythm sections in metal. They like to switch time signatures constantly, and so I'm gonna talk about Lateralus. Let's get into this album. So the first song I want to talk about is The Grudge. So The Grudge is the most aggressive song on this album. It's also the opening track, and it also features one of the longest yells I've ever heard Maynard James Keenan do in a song. I know he's done a couple other ones that are pretty similar to that with other bands and with Tool as well. Um, but yeah, The Grudge still features an impressively long 30-second yell that I think it's kind of fun, and that's just a highlight of this song. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about the Soundscape songs. So, Beyond Blue, Apocalypse, Mantra, and there's another one on here. I think it's Reflection. Yeah, Reflection. Or Disposition. One of those two is the Soundscape song. I don't remember because it's been a while since I've heard this album in its entirety, and I don't really listen to this album just a whole lot. I do listen to it, but not enough to know which tracks are what. However, I'm not going to be covering the last several tracks on this album unless it's one that sticks out to me, because one thing about Tool is they like their soundscapes, and some of their songs, even their regular songs, blend into each other, so it's hard to differentiate sometimes. Some people will have a conniption when they hear me say that, but to me it's true. I have a hard time telling the difference between some of their songs. It's because they like to recycle bass riffs, which, for a band that's really rhythmically driven, it's cool sounding and it's definitely their sound. It's also not, to me, that all that creative if you're not going to at least try something that sounds different. So that's just a critique of mine that I have with Tool. But anyways, let's get to the next song that I want to cover. The next song I want to cover is Schism. So Schism has one of my favorite bass riffs that Tool does. I know I said a lot of their bass riffs tend to blend into each other, but Schism's a great example of them utilizing their keys, that the key that they like to sing in, but to a very, very different, for a very different use than they normally use it for. So Schism also features a bunch of time signature changes. So props to their drummer for being able to pull that off. Props to their bassist for being able to pull that off, and same with their guitarist. Also, I love Maynard's vocals in this song. It's really good. Most of his vocals are really good to begin with anyways, but this one definitely features some of my favorite vocals from him. Plus, I like the fact they use a synthesizer. I mean, synthesizers in metal, it's not something you hear just a whole lot, unless you listen to prog metal, but it's not something you hear just a whole lot, and I love it when bands use synthesizers in metal, because there's a way you can use them and still make the song heavy. So, yeah. I'm going to briefly talk about Ticks and Leeches. It's my least favorite song in this album. Not because of the not because of anything instrumental. It's because the song features one of my favorite drum intros I've ever heard and it devolves into absolute madness by the end of the song, and I'm like, I just don't understand why it's a popular song with some people. The drumming is beyond amazing, as it usually is in these albums, but not a fan of the vocals, not a fan of much of anything with the song. I always skip it every time it comes up. Mostly because by the time you get to the guitar work and stuff, I can't do it, unfortunately. So, yeah. Alright, let's talk about the album track, Lateralis itself. Lateralis is an interesting concept song-wise. It's also very different than most of their other songs musically. It is a great example of them branching out a little bit from their music. It still sounds like Tool, but it's different. The song itself is about 9 minutes, so it's also extremely long, which I don't mind at all. I listen to Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd had a tendency to have really long-winded songs, so no worries on that. But this song has an interesting concept because it's designed with the Fibonacci sequence, which I'm not a mathematician, I'm an historian, so I have no clue what the Fibonacci sequence even is number-wise. I know it's a different set of numbers, and I know it's supposed to form like a spiral, which there's a cool section midway through the song where the bass, vocals, guitar, drums, everybody combines to essentially create a swirl of sorts with the sound. And it's a bunch of bass slides, guitar slides, and Minard's vocals just, if you feel like the song is going in circles, it's really neat. I love that part of the song. Um, the song itself is interesting because it's kind of poking fun at the people who will probably overanalyze the song. At least that's how I've heard it. That's probably different than what the song actually is, but I'm not going to go too deep into it because honestly, I'd be reflecting the message of the song if I did go too deep into the song anyways. Plus, it's just a solidly good track. Also, another fun thing to note, it's one of the only songs on this album that actually has a proper guitar solo. I do not count Shredding Wah as a guitar solo. What I mean by Shredding Wah is their guitarist is a riff maker, but not an excellent soloist, or if he is, he doesn't do a lot of soloing. And I wish he would, because I'm not hugely fond of people just using wah pedal as a crutch. So that criticism does actually apply to Metallica. So there's that. Anyways, next song. Last two tracks I want to talk about are Triad and Fide Op. I don't know how to say that last song's name. It's a secret track that if you're listening to disc, you have to skip to get to, and I'll explain why in a bit. So Triad is an instrumental. It's the only long-winded instrumental on this album. Most of the other ones are just soundscape songs, but this one's not a soundscape. It actually is a proper instrumental, and I love it because it kind of just reminds me a bit of the instrumentals like Call of Cthulhu, Orion, um, Into the Lungs of Hell, stuff like that, where metal bands like to do different just instrumentals on albums. And the crazy thing about Triad is when it ends abruptly. But if you skip the track right before it ends, you can come across a weird avant-garde version of a radio prank call from the early 90s. So the prank call I'm referring to is one where a guy called into a radio pretending to be from Area 51 and saying that he had secrets about Area 51 and how there's aliens who have already infiltrated the government, stuff like that. That's the whole gist of the prank call. Well, what Tool did was they sampled it and then they stuck a bunch of just drum tracks and white noise on it and static, and it's kind of creepy sounding. Like the last track is creepy, and the only way to get to it on the disc version is to skip through Triad, or at least to skip right until the end of Triad. So you want to listen to Triad, but skip right before the song ends, because if it just ends, you're not going to get the track. So it's one of those secret tracks that really elevates this album to another level, at least in my mind, because when bands do that, it makes me so happy. But yeah, overall, I would definitely rank this album an 8 out of 10. It's still a really, really good album. Sure, there are some weak songs on there. I talked about a couple. But other than that, I'm not. Other than that, I mean, it's still a really solid album. It's still definitely an album I will willingly listen to again. I still listen to a lot of the tracks on the album. I don't listen to the whole thing. I still think my favorite songs on the album, obviously Triad and Lateralus, are my two favorite songs on the album. Schism comes in third. Also, shout outs to The Patient and both of the Parabolas. Both of those songs are pretty amazing. So, yeah, that is my review of Tool. Please like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching, my good viewers.